Welcome to the on-demand module, Start the Year Off Right, National Geographic Science for Florida. This is the first in a series of on-demand modules to help you get started using National Geographic Science for Florida. My name is Angela Terry, National Consultant for National Geographic Learning, and I will be your presenter. Built to target your next generation Sunshine State standards, National Geographic Science, or NG Science, is a research-based program that brings science learning to life through the lens of National Geographic. As I said before, this is the first in a series of on-demand training modules to help prepare you to use National Geographic Science in your classroom. After you complete all parts of the module, you will want to view Module 2, Module 3, or Module 4, depending on which grade level you teach. If you will be using Exam View CD, you will also want to view Module 5. Now that you have National Geographic Science for Florida, you may be asking yourself a few questions. What does NG Science offer me and my students to help us succeed? What exactly is a science notebook? What are the 4 levels of inquiry and how are they different? How do I access the online resources? How do I customize NG Science to fit my schedule? During this session, I will help you answer these questions by giving you an overview of the program and all of its components. I'll share with you the research behind science notebooks as well as a few examples. I will also explain the 4 levels of inquiry and their importance to the program. I'll show you how to access both the student and teacher resources on myngconnect.com, and finally, I'll demonstrate how to use the online lesson planner. So, let's get started. With National Geographic Science Florida, students are immersed in the nature of science right from the beginning. Process skills build at each grade level to ensure complete understanding of the nature of science, and this chart shows how these process skills and the nature of science work together to help students think and act like scientists. Unlike most programs where you only focus on nature of science at the beginning of the year, National Geographic Science Florida has embedded this instruction throughout each unit and at each grade level. National Geographic Science also provides students with abundant and relevant hands-on explorations to facilitate a thorough understanding of key science concepts. The 4 levels of inquiry in National Geographic Science are designed to help students build confidence and competence in scientific thought and inquiry. In National Geographic Science, the 5 E's instructional learning cycle is fully integrated in all levels of inquiry. By being thoughtfully interwoven in each level, the 5 E's help students achieve the highest level of learning in each and every investigation. Since the next generation of Florida Sunshine State standards are targeted and focused, National Geographic Science Florida Edition was created to be targeted and focused on those same standards. Each chapter in each unit centers on one big idea that focuses on the next generation Sunshine State standards. With National Geographic Science, students build their scientific and content literacy through Become an Expert books and selections that tie directly to the big ideas and the science we see in our world today. Proven reading comprehension strategies are presented to ensure that content learning is deep and lasting. With National Geographic Science, students will build scientific literacy and gain an understanding of the nature of science from real-life National Geographic explorers. Your students will learn that science is a way of knowing. It's empirically based and consistent with evidence. It's subject to change when new evidence presents itself, and it's a creative process. And speaking of National Geographic Explorers, the best and most unique resources that we have at National Geographic are the people who are exploring the world, doing science, and making a difference. These people have played a key role in the development of National Geographic science, and your students will have the opportunity to get up close and personal with their personal experiences. The National Geographic Science Authorship team is made up of leading experts in the field. Our authors include Dr. Randy Bell, our Nature of Science and Life Science expert; Dr. Malcolm Butler, our Science Notebook and Physical Science expert; Dr. Kathy Kabe Trundle, our Early Childhood and Earth Science expert; Dr. Judy Lederman, our Inquiry expert; and Drs. Nell Duke and Dr. David Moore, our literacy experts who worked to ensure that appropriate content area reading was embedded throughout the program. As I've just mentioned, National Geographic Science has been designed by experts in science education. Under the Professional Development link on MyNG Connect, you will find author monographs and podcasts where the National Geographic Science Program authors present best practices for teaching that are grounded in current research. Use the study guides with each podcast and monograph to foster professional dialogue around each topic. We will be visiting this page periodically throughout the session. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the nature of science is a big part of the program, so let's take a look at the research behind this key element. The next slide takes you directly to the professional development page you just saw. The session will pause automatically to allow you time to follow the steps on this slide as you strengthen your foundational knowledge in the nature of science by reading Dr. Bell's author monograph. Dr. Bell shares a lot of important information about teaching students the nature of science, beginning with the fact that we teach the nature of science to help students develop accurate views of what science is and the types of questions science can answer. Dr. Bell also points out that the nature of science, or ways of knowing, is made up of a few key ideas that are most practical in the school setting. Scientific knowledge is based upon evidence. Scientific knowledge can change over time. Creativity plays an important role in science, and background knowledge influences how scientists view data. When it comes to effectively teaching the nature of science, we need to be explicit, connect to context with inquiry activities, and link to process skills. While students are doing the activities, they are learning the skills they need to do science while they are learning scientific concepts and content. So now that we know we're going to be teaching the nature of science consistently throughout the program, let's take a look at the resources you will be using as you do so. NG Science has 3 different component structures across the grades. We will begin by looking at the kindergarten components. We will then move on to first and second grade components before looking at the 3rd through 5th grade. In kindergarten, all print components for each unit will be housed in a kit like you see here. All of your big books will be found here in the back of the kit. This drawer is perfect for storing all of your teaching materials, and all of your student books are here. There are 3 units available for kindergarten: Earth, Life, and Physical, and 2 of those units have 2 parts as you see here. For each unit, students will be working with Big Ideas Big Books, 1 per part, and a science inquiry Write On, Wipe Off Big Book. They will also have access to 6 Become an Expert books per unit, or 3 for each part. These books tie directly to the big ideas and are presented at 3 reading levels, allowing differentiation for students at all levels. And 6 Explore on Your Own books, 6 per unit or 3 per part, which are also leveled. When it comes to teacher components, you will have 1 teacher's edition for each unit. The Big Ideas Big Books and Big Idea cards will help guide your instruction for the unit. A Science Inquiry Big Book and Write About Big Book are also provided to guide the inquiry and writing lessons. You will also have Learning Masters and an Assessment Handbook for each unit. You will receive a teacher demo kit that contains all materials needed to demonstrate each inquiry activity for that unit. Each unit also has its own complete inquiry kit that contains a class set of all of the materials you need for every inquiry activity in that unit. This is a separate purchase. Students will have access to their own account on myngconnect.com. Here, they will be able to listen to the Become an Expert books online and play games related to the science they are learning. And of course, you will also have an account that allows you to access all of your National Geographic Science resources. Each unit in kindergarten follows the same instructional path, which begins with setting up the science notebooks. Then students meet a real National Geographic scientist through the unit launch video. The Big Ideas instruction and science inquiry lessons for Part 1 follow the unit launch. As you can see here on the planner page, the inquiry lessons are built right into the instruction. Next, it's time to read the informational text that corresponds to the part of the unit, Become an Expert, and Explore on Your Own books, 3 of each. Remember, there are 2 parts in some of the units, so after reading the informational text for Part 1, follow the same steps, Big Ideas in Inquiry, read informational text for Part 2. Then it's time to write and wrap up. In first and second grade, all print components for each unit will be housed in a kit like you see here. As you can see, it's similar to the kindergarten box. All of your Big Idea books will be found here in the back of the kit. There's a drawer for all of your teaching materials, and all of your student books are here. There are 6 units for grades 1 and 2. 2 units for each of the areas of science: Earth, Life, and Physical. For each of these units, students will be working with a Big Ideas book. You'll get 18 per class, a Science Inquiry book, 8 per class. They will have access to 3 Become an Expert books per unit and 3 Explore on Your Own books per unit. Just like the kindergarten components, you will have 1 teacher's edition for each unit. The Big Ideas Big Book and Big Idea cards will help guide your instruction for each unit. A Write About Science Big Book is also provided to help guide the writing instruction. You also have Learning Masters and an Assessment Tools kit for each unit, which include an Assessment Handbook, an Exam View CD, and e-Assessment, our online assessment tool. And again, you will receive a teacher demo kit that contains all materials needed to demonstrate each inquiry activity for that unit. Each unit also has a complete science inquiry kit that contains a class set of materials you will need for every inquiry activity in that unit, though this is a separate purchase. Students will have access to their own account on myngconnect.com. Here, they will be able to listen to big ideas and become an expert books online, access the digital library, and play games related to the science they are learning. And of course, you will also have an account that allows you to access all of your National Geographic Science resources. As you will see, the instructional path for the units in grades 1 and 2 are the same that we saw in kindergarten, beginning with the setting up of the science notebook, the introduction of a National Geographic scientist through the unit launch video, followed by the Big Ideas instruction and science inquiry lessons. Then students will read the informational text before writing and wrapping up the unit. Now, with multiple kids per grade level in kindergarten through second grade, you may be thinking, where am I going to store those boxes? Well, the great thing is they're nice to look at, so here are a few ideas. They can be stored under cubbies like you see here, or you can use them to divide off small sections in the classroom. Of course, you can always store them on top of another bookshelf. But can you spot how the teacher is storing the unused units here? Yep, she made a table for small group work out of them. So in kindergarten through second grade, we had a lot of little books for little hands. But in grades 3 through 5, the program grows up with the students. At each grade level, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, students will have one Big Ideas resource book that includes 3 units, Earth, Life, and Physical. They will use one science inquiry and writing book all year long as they work through the inquiry activities, 8 per class, and they will have access to a variety of Explore on Your Own books for each unit. These are independent level readers that will help extend the content they are learning. As for the teacher components for grades 3 through 5, they are very similar to the K2 components. You will have one teacher's edition for each unit, Earth, Life, and Physical. So even though students have only one Big Ideas resource book, you will have 3 teacher's editions. There is also a Science Methods and Process Skills Big Book and Teacher's Guide that's used to help build scientific literacy for your future scientists. You will also have Learning Masters and Assessment Handbook. For assessments in grades 3 through 5, you will also have access to the FCAT Test Prep online resources, ExamView CD-ROM, and eAssessment, our online assessment tool. And once again, you will receive a teacher demo kit that contains all materials needed to demonstrate each inquiry activity for that unit. Each unit has its own complete science inquiry kit that contains a class set of materials you need for every inquiry activity in that unit, and this is a separate purchase. Students will have access to their own account on myngconnect.com. Here, they will be able to listen to NG Science selections online, access the digital library and various enrichment activities, and play games related to the science they are learning. And of course, you will also have your own account that allows you to access all of your National Geographic Science resources. The instructional path for 3rd through 5th grade is similar to what we've seen in K2, beginning with the science notebook and the unit launch. However, at this level, we begin by introducing students to the big idea questions they will be studying throughout the unit before we meet the scientists and watch the unit launch video. Since students at this level will be reading more of the text on their own, the strategies for reading informational text that were covered in grades K2 in the Read Informational Text section are embedded into the Big Ideas instruction. The Big Ideas instruction is broken down into chapters. And in grades 3 through 5, the Become an Expert informational text is built right in, but they do have additional Explore on Your Own leveled readers. Now, one component that is the same at all levels is the Teacher's Edition, and at every level, kindergarten through grade 5, you will have one Teacher's Edition per unit. When you open the front cover of the Teacher's Edition, you will see some colored tabs. The first two tabs are the same at every level: Nature of Science, Science Notebooks, and Big Ideas. But in the K2 Teacher's Editions, you have two additional tabs: Read Informational Text and Write and Wrap Up. Don't worry, for teachers in grades 3 through 5, you will still be covering these two skills. It's just built right into the Big Ideas instruction. The last tab in each Teacher's Edition is also the same. Behind this tab, you will find all of your next generation Sunshine State standards that are covered for your grade level. As I've just mentioned, the first tab in every Teacher's Edition is the Nature of Science, Science Notebook tab. In this section, you have access to detailed information regarding the importance of setting up and using a science notebook with National Geographic Science. At every level, the first step in each unit is to spend time setting up the science notebook. So let's learn more about this element of the program. The next slide takes you directly to the NG Science Author Monographs and Podcasts page. The session will pause automatically and give you time to follow the steps on this slide to learn more about using a science notebook from Dr. Malcolm Butler. Science notebooks are an integral part of the National Geographic Science program. Effective use of science notebooks helps students improve understanding of science content and process and reading comprehension scores on state standardized tests. It gives students an opportunity to record observational data and develop inquiry skills while serving as a context for developing literacy. And just like real scientists, students get to record their observations and share their data with colleagues or peers. Now let's take a look at some examples of science notebooks from real NG Science classrooms. When it comes to setting up your science notebooks, there are many options. This teacher has a spiral notebook for each student, and she has students use index cards to create separate sections for each unit. This teacher uses a 3-ring binder, which makes it easy for students to insert pages when necessary, and plastic sheet protectors are used so students can store some of their work. A composition book is another option, and you can see the little pink tab that is used to divide the units. Also notice how the teacher combines the learning masters from the NG Science by gluing or taping them into the book and the original student work. This teacher has taped a Ziploc baggie to the inside of her notebooks so students can store their vocabulary words in a safe place. When it comes to what's in a science notebook, there are a few key elements you want to make sure your students are recording. The first is their notes and thoughts about the big ideas of science. The examples on the left come from students in 2nd grade, and the examples on the right are from 4th grade students. As you can see, each of these examples in some way represents the big ideas students are learning about the units they are currently studying. Take a moment to look at these examples. The next key element of a science notebook is the vocabulary students are learning. Throughout the program, they will be learning both science process vocabulary, such as observe and compare, and science content words, such as matter or volume. Again, the two examples on the left come from second graders and the two on the right from fourth graders. Throughout your teacher's edition, you will find references to the science notebook, and at times you may want to include some of the Learning Master pages like you see here. The third element, content notes and review, mostly relates to grades 2 through 5 students. Students should be encouraged to jot down notes from each lesson in their science notebook. Let them know how they can include graphic organizers, charts, lists, questions, and sketches. In your teacher's editions, suggestions for note-taking appears at point of use. The final element found in an effective science notebook is the observations and notes they take during their inquiry activities. Writing what they learn will help students understand why they are doing the activity and what it teaches them. Again, the two examples on the left are from grade 2 and the two on the right from grade 4. As you begin to work with your students and their science notebooks, remember to model what science notebooking looks like. Keep your own science notebooks as a model for your students. Allow students to take ownership of their science notebooks so they feel comfortable using them and understand that sometimes in science there are no wrong answers. Keep in mind, as students progress through the program from year to year, they will continue to gain experience with the science notebooks, making it easier to get started each year. Now, speaking of using those science notebooks to record inquiry activities, as previously mentioned, NG Science provides students with abundant and relevant hands-on explorations to facilitate a thorough understanding of key science concepts. The 4 levels of inquiry in NG Science are designed to help students build confidence and competence in scientific thought and inquiry. Each unit begins with an explore activity, ends with an open inquiry investigation, and has multiple directed inquiry and guided inquiry investigations in between. The next slide takes you directly to the NG Science author monographs and podcast page. The session will pause and allow you time to follow the steps on the slide to strengthen your foundational knowledge in the levels of inquiry by reading Dr. Judy Lederman's author monograph. According to Dr. Lederman, the National Science Education Standards for Science's inquiry suggests that these 5 abilities are necessary for elementary students to do scientific inquiry. They must be able to ask questions about objects, organisms, and events in the environment, plan and conduct a simple investigation to answer that question. They need to know how to use simple equipment and tools to gather data, then use that data to construct a reasonable explanation. And finally, they will need to be able to share their results. With NG Science, students will experience all 4 levels of inquiry within each unit. Using their student inquiry books, the unit inquiry kit, and of course their science notebooks. Let's learn a little bit more about each level. With every inquiry activity, there will always be a problem or question, a procedure, and a solution. When it comes to the 4 levels of inquiry, the variable for teachers and teaching science is how to determine how much is given to the students to structure or guide their investigation. This chart provides a quick and easy visual representation of what is given to the students at each level. With Explore, we see that everything is given to the students. In directed inquiry, students are given the problem or question and the procedures, but are left to develop their own conclusions. With guided inquiry, The only thing provided to the students is the problem or question. And with open inquiry, everything is left to the students to choose. As you can see, the levels of inquiry transition responsibility from the teacher to the student, with scaffolding support to help students move toward their own inquiry investigations. Directed inquiry is a more teacher-centered approach, while in guided inquiry, the teacher guides students through the investigation. An open inquiry transitions to a more student-centered approach. The 4 levels of inquiry are hierarchical. Students cannot be expected to successfully complete a guided activity without plenty of experience with exploration and directed inquiry activities. In the Explore activity, teachers organize learning of simple scientific principles and directly give students the questions, specific steps, and correct interpretation, while students build background knowledge, engage in explorative activities, and learn how to recognize testable questions, safely design a plan, collect and analyze data, and form evidence-based conclusions. A simple definition of the Explore level is confirmation of a principle through an activity in which the results are known in advance. Take a moment to read the steps on the slide. If you have some of these materials, go ahead and pause the session to grab them and follow the steps. In this example, you already know what is going to happen when you push the ball. At the same time, this simple activity is helping to build your background knowledge and providing an example for how to design a plan and collect and analyze data. Exploration always happens first to build background knowledge and stir up interest in questions that will be investigated with subsequent levels of inquiry. These activities are pretty straightforward, and their end result is pretty much guaranteed. With directed inquiry activities, the problem and procedure are given directly, but the students are left to reach their own conclusions. Students are often asked to make predictions about what they believe the outcome of the investigation will be. In this type of activity, students investigate a problem presented by the teacher using a prescribed procedure that is also provided by the teacher. Here, they now have the opportunity to develop their own conclusions by analyzing the data and coming up with their own evidence-based conclusions and recording them in their science notebooks. Directed inquiry is the typical cookbook, follow the recipe kind of activity that you are probably most familiar with. Directed inquiry activities are exactly what the name says, directed. The teacher directs the students through each part of the activity. As I said, in a directed inquiry activity, the teacher gives the problem and procedure directly to the students, and the students develop their own conclusions by analyzing data. If we continue with our ball rolling example, here I am presenting you with a problem, how far the ball will roll on different surfaces, and providing you with a step-by-step procedure for finding the answer, but it is up to you to develop your own conclusion. Notice that I was literally giving you the steps one at a time. This is the do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it level. With guided inquiry, the research problem or question is provided, and as students begin their investigation, the teacher is there to provide support and monitor their selection of methods, materials, data organization and analysis, and conclusions. During this level of inquiry, students have the opportunity to apply their analytical skills to support their own evidence-based conclusions to the questions being investigated. Guided inquiry provides opportunities for students to take more responsibility during the investigation. Students may have choices of methods, materials, data organization and analysis, and conclusions. Again, in guided inquiry, the research problem or question is provided, but students are left to devise their own methods and solution. So if we continue with our example, I would simply provide you with a new question, and based on the materials you have or can find, you would develop your own procedure for answering that question. In open inquiry, problems as well as methods and solutions are left open. The teacher's role is to support students as they select their questions, methods, materials, and so on. The goal is for students to take full responsibility for all aspects of the investigation. These activities involve students in formulating their own research questions, developing procedures to answer their research questions, collecting and analyzing data, and using evidence to reach their own conclusions. The ultimate goal for elementary students is not to make all inquiry activities open inquiry investigations. Rather, teachers should strive for a mix of inquiry levels appropriate to the abilities of their students. However, providing students only with activities at the exploration levels denies them the opportunity to develop and practice important inquiry skills and give them an incomplete view of how science is done. It is only with experience with all of these levels and methods of scientific inquiry that our students will achieve the ultimate goal of becoming scientifically literate. Since open inquiry is where students take full responsibility for all aspects of the investigation, in continuing with our example, I would simply provide you with a few questions from which you could choose, or you could make up your own. Now, at any level, inquiry can be daunting for a teacher. So National Geographic Science provides you with lots of support for doing inquiry. The Inquiry Activity Kits supplies almost everything you need for each unit investigation in labeled bags in one box. And as you see in your teacher's editions, there is a Manage the Investigation box at the bottom of every inquiry activity. As you can see, this section lays out everything you need to know before you get started. How much time will this take? How do I group my students? What advanced preparation do I need? What can I expect as a result of the activity? Because as a teacher, you need to know how the activity is supposed to turn out, and teaching tips for working through the activity. In your teacher's edition, you'll also find this icon at the top of every inquiry page. This reminds you that there are additional teacher tips available on MyNG Connect in an MP3 or PDF format. When you've completed this portion of the Getting Started with NG Science session, you'll want to be sure to watch the Getting Started with MyNG Connect for Science video. This short video will walk you through the online resources that are available for both you and your students. To begin customizing NG Science to fit your schedule, you will also want to watch the Getting Started with the Online Lesson Planner video. These videos can be found on the on-demand training page directly under the link you used to view this session. Congratulations! You have almost completed the first on-demand module for National Geographic Science. This session provided you with an overview of National Geographic Science and all of the program components. We also discussed the importance of using science notebooks and studied the 4 levels of inquiry. And I just piqued your interest in the online resources available on MyNG Connect, which leads you to our next steps. Before your next session, study your National Geographic Science Teacher's Edition. Become familiar with all of the components you will be using. Plan some time to view the remaining on-demand modules related to your grade level, including the MyNG Connect videos, and complete the test on the next slide in order to receive continuing education credit for this course. You have now completed this Florida National Geographic Science on-demand module. Upon closing this window, your completion results will appear. Don't forget to check the Attachments tab on the left side of the screen for directions on how to submit your continuing education credit request.